Hey folks, welcome back. This is going to be the second video in my Cisco network, design project. And in this video, it's going to be pretty quick. We're going to broadly go over my different subnetting choices and some of the broad subnet categories here that I have set up for my network. So my first category here in the Google Sheet is going to be the admin subnet. And under subnet use, we're going to have some broad categories, like I said, just to go over that really quick before I jump into the admin subnet. So we have management, user device subnet, server, device, and DMZ. So now I'm going to hop back up here and we'll go over the admin subnet. Now the admin subnet is basically exactly what it sounds like and what it's named after. It is going to be admin users, network admins, system administrators, the different IT staff that are on the network, adminning the network itself. So very simple. And the IP range I kind of picked out for that, or IP subnet choice, was 192.168.0.0. And as you can see, that is very different from the other subnets on the network as far as its numbering goes. And my reasoning behind that was I wanted to pick out a subnet that's very distinct and easy to identify. And you ask yourself, okay, Austin, why do I want to have an easily identifiable admin subnet? And, my main reason for that is that I want it to be easy to identify in access lists and in logs, and in any kind of events that are generated through syslog or through, an alerting piece of software or service. Because let's say someone's testing something on the admin network, one of your fellow IT staff, and it flags an alarm, and you're trying to hunt down who that is in your, very large network. As you can see, some of these subnetting address spaces are quite big. And in general, let's just say this is a new person who's not really familiar with the design of the network. Let's say it's like their second day in and they're in charge of monitoring these alerts. And, the person who's experienced just went out for lunch, he just left, and you get this alert that something's going on. Someone's trying to gain SSH access to, one of your core switches, something like that. And you're going to want to know, it's this IP, what subnet is it from, what's this subnet for in the network, and that way you can easily and distinctly pick that out. So 192.168.0.0, which is going to be variably subnetted down to much smaller pieces for different portions of the network, and more importantly, remote sites. But we'll go over that stuff in a later video, because right now we're just going to be focusing on the headquarters here and its infrastructure. But keep in mind, these very large address spaces are for just that. The expansion of the company out to different remote sites, different branch sites, stuff like that. So keep that in mind as you see that these address spaces are quite large. That's the reason why. So outside of the admin subnet, we have our next one, which is going to be management. Now, the management subnet is going to specifically be for the management interfaces of devices on the network. So anything from access points to switches to routers to firewalls, that's what the management portion of the network is going to be for. So we have a pretty big subnet for that. Like I said, it's going to be variably subnetted down to much, much smaller subnets, especially for the management interfaces on the network. You're really only going to need one address, or in some instances, two addresses for that portion of the network. Usually it's going to be one, but it really just depends on the device and what it can handle. So that's pretty simple. As far as the security design and how that's going to be set up, we're going to be going into that more in depth, of course, in a later video, because we're only in the second one. But the admin network is going to pretty much have, admin access, such as SSH or through a web portal, to the management network. So that's going to be the relation between the two. Then the next category of subnet that we have here is going to be the user and device subnet. And it has subnets here because it's a typo. And because mainly it's going to be variably subnetted. But This subnet right here is going to be used for any addresses that users are going to have, whether that be on their machine, whether that be on their phone, on a wireless network. That is what that subnet's going to be for. And another thing to mention too is that this subnet's also going to be for any other devices such as printers and stuff like that, which is going to be separated a little bit differently once we get down to the access layer. So that's going to be subnetted into different subnets, maybe for devices like that, and then you might have your printers. And then also I was thinking about putting the phones on this subnet as well. Of course, like I said, it's going to be variably subnetted in the smaller networks, but I was thinking about that too. I'm still thinking that over. So I might create a whole different subnetting, or a whole different subnet for the phones, but we will have to see. As long as it's laid out in a way that makes sense, that's scalable, and that's easily documented, I think it'll be okay if we put them under here, because they are going to be devices that users will be using, and they can easily fit under this category. And then the next category here, we have the server subnet. And in the server subnet, it's going to be exactly that. We're going to have servers. Any internal servers that are not public facing are going to be inside of this subnet and inside of the VLANs that will, encapsulate that subnet. So that's that. Pretty simple. Anything internal, domain controllers, file servers, stuff like that. And then we have the device subnet in general. Device subnet's going to be a little bit different, or a lot different than the user device subnets. It's going to be for primarily point-to-point links, connections between layer 3 devices, and to allow them to communicate with each other. So this huge chunk of addressing here is going to be scaled down to most likely /30 networks or subnets, so that two devices can connect to each other, like in the core of the network, as you can see how I have that set up here. So that's pretty simple. That's what that subnet's going to be used for. The DMZ is going to contain any public-facing servers on the network. So any public-facing servers could be an email server, maybe a web server for some kind of internal CMS. Also a point where people could connect in for VPNs, whether that be, it's probably going to be an ASA in this instance. So the ASA is one of the ASA's external IPs for people to connect in for client-based VPNs. That'll be in the DMZ as well. So that's going to be the last broad section here. And then down here you can see I have a ton of other things that I've started working on. And these are primarily going to be, or this list is going to primarily be for the access switches. So as you can see, C1S1, which is going to be closet 1, switch 1, and then closet 1, switch 1, and then the VLAN name. So if we go over here, it'll make more sense. So for example, this would be closet 1, and then we have 4 switches in each closet. So this is just going to be an easy way of identifying what device is what, where it's located, and then also what VLAN is VLAN or VLANs are associated with it. So just to go over it really quick, and I'm going to be going over this more in depth in a later video. But each switch here is going to get its own VLAN minus special VLANs, such as the device VLAN, which would be for, right now in my mind, is going to just be for printers, scanners, anything of that nature that's not really like a workstation or a laptop or something like that. So that's what that's going to be for. And then I'm also going to be creating another VLAN and give it another subnet specifically for the phones. Okay, so that's going to be at a later time, but just to give you an idea of what that list is for. And then up here, I've also updated a couple more things in general in this draw.io diagram. I've expanded upon the core of the network. I've kind of started creating our WAN edge here, and then I've also added in the DMZ, the server subnet, and obviously the access portion of the network as well. And this is just a really simple overview of what it's going to be like. because I'm really going to get into how everything is configured, well, clearly in GNS3. But this is just a quick overview to give me an idea of how it's going to be set up, so that when I do go to set it up in GNS3, I'm not really in the phase of figuring everything out. I've actually designed everything and I've gotten it ready for GNS3. So that way I can get all my commands together and I already know how I want it to be designed so that I can implement it quickly and efficiently. And it'll also help me in this phase to find any faults that may be associated with the design that maybe I didn't think through clearly. So that's another plus. I'll be able to work through a lot of stuff before actually implementing it. So that's going to basically wrap up this video, which generally just went over some of my subnetting choices.